Let's talk Merrimack. I'm Ashley DePro, your host for today, and I have lived in Merrimack for about 8 years now. I have 3 young kids, 2 of them which are attending the school district, and this year for Halloween, I'm going to dress up as a giant T-Rex. The goal of the show is to talk about things that concern Merrimack residents and encourage you to get involved. Today's show focuses on the ongoing congressional campaign, and I am joined today by Christian Urrutia, one of the candidates for the District 1 seat that Chris Pappas is vacating next term. So, welcome, Christian.
Thank you for having me here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
So to get started, how about you introduce yourself and tell us about your motivation behind running for this position?
Sure. So look, I'm a native of Hudson, not too far down the river from here. Grew up there. I'm a public school kid, first generation American. And I say that with pride. First in my family to be born in the United States. I think to me that embodies the American dream. Got a chance to go to law school, got a law degree, went off, prosecuted and brought charges against individuals when I was working at the Hillsborough County Attorney's Office to start off my career. Then went off to practice international law and human rights, chase down war criminals, worked in trial defense services in the military. I earned a commission, joined the military at 35 years old, by the way. Continue to serve here in the National Guard. I think it's just incredibly important, just the best that America has to offer. And I was appointee of the President Biden at the Pentagon in 2020, taking on some of our hardest national security challenges. And the most important thing, though, and I actually got married here in Merrimack to my wife, who's a small business owner, and firsthand she's been going through some of the challenges that I think a lot of small business owners are facing with tariffs. Right now in my life, I help lead our policy in Airbnb on anti-discrimination, human rights, and privacy, in trying to ensure that tech and those such important values are married up together. I think that's one of the seminal questions of the 21st century, as tech plays a larger and larger role in our life. In terms of getting into this race, to me, I think there's 2 fundamental questions. The first is, how do we ensure that the Trump administration doesn't make life harder for everyday Americans? And we can talk more about that and what that looks like. But when I look at what's happening with the rule of law, when I look about what's happening with costs in this country, when I look about what's happening to the accessibility of healthcare in this country, the ability to build a business, we need a fundamental change. But it's not just enough for Democrats to say, no, look, I'm running as a Democrat, for Democrats to say, we don't like Trump. We actually have to offer a fundamentally different vision. How are we going to tackle the enduring problems that we have in this country? You know, folks are going bankrupt because they get sick. Right now in this country, if you get cancer, 25% chance you're going to go bankrupt. I think that's fundamentally immoral. And I think a lot of Americans agree with me. Government, though, hasn't found a solution. Too often what we see is that government's creating more challenges for people, not fixing the problems that need to be addressed. I think we need to tackle that. And that is one of the reasons I fundamentally have gotten in this race. We have a lot of big problems that our country's facing right now. We need new blood, new energy, change to tackle those problems.
So I know you are a big proponent of limiting insider trading.
Yes.
And personally, I think that a lot of times laws that citizens want to pass aren't passed because of representatives receiving benefits from insider trading. So
Agreed.
Can you expand more on that?
Sure. So look, what we see is all these people that go to Congress that don't have a history of trading stocks, all of a sudden go to Congress and they're the best stock traders in the world. Okay, they're doing better than the Goldman Sachs, than the biggest hedge funds in terms of their return. That makes very little sense. I think that's an abuse of the public trust. And we've seen it time and time again from both parties. This isn't just a story about Republicans, okay? We need to actually have comprehensive reforms where members of Congress cannot buy and sell individual stocks. And there should also be limits on when they can trade. For a lot of folks that work for companies that have public stock out there, they can't trade the stock of that public company outside of limited windows. We should have similar laws in Congress. Folks should be holding widely diversified stocks like an ETF. And then there should be limits on when they can trade so that there is no question about whether they're acting in the public trust. It's not only that we clearly see corruption on this, but it's also the perception of corruption. What can we do to insulate that? And if I go to Congress from day one, I'll support legislation that does that. And I would say that is one of the fundamental things. It should be a litmus test for voters. Is the person I'm going to send to Congress, are they going to do things to try to clean up the blatant corruption that we see from members of Congress using insider information to make money on the public dime?
Those are good points. Appreciate that.
Yep. Speaking
Speaking of money, the cost of living in Merrimack is a huge concern for residents, especially regarding property taxes. And I'm going to use my cheat sheet here. So what do you see the federal government having and bringing financial relief to our families, seniors, and young people just starting out?
Yeah, well, the first thing we need is the federal government not to make it harder for people to live their everyday life. And what do I mean by that? Look at the tariff policy. And I now mentioned it a few times, okay? On any given day, this administration will say that the cost of certain goods will go up 45%, 75%, 100%. People can't build a business around that. And we're seeing it affecting folks' pocketbooks right now. Also, let's talk about healthcare. The ACA subsidies. So the ACA subsidies make it cheaper for millions of Americans to afford their healthcare.
I think it was like 24 million or something
Yeah,
like that.
it's a huge swath of America. They've expired. So people are going to have 75% increase in premiums.
I heard 100%.
Well, 100%, 75%, an obscene amount for millions of Americans. We need a government that actually isn't going to do that. But then we got to tackle, okay, how do we then lower costs? And a lot of this is ultimately fundamental problems we have on the supply side, where we don't have enough housing, for example. In New Hampshire, we're 60,000 homes short. In America, we're 4 million homes short. And the critical stock of homes short that we are starter homes. We're not building them. We need to actually invest in that. One of the things that I called for is a national infrastructure bank that does that from day one, that's capitalized by the federal government, that has a mandate and a vision to say, let's put financing in the hands of local builders in our communities to build starter homes that are intended for regular folks and not corporations. This is the thing. Our country can do great things. We've seen it do great things. We rebuilt Europe after World War II. We can build homes in America if we have the political will and vision to do it. That's a fundamental driver of cost issues in Merrimack, in New Hampshire, and in the country as a whole. I think, though, what we fundamentally don't see in Washington is a sufficient focus and vision on these issues to tackle these problems.
Definitely agreed. And I think that kind of just, like, it's just an endless circle. Like, we can't do these things for the American people because the laws aren't being passed because of kickbacks that representatives are getting to benefit corporations versus, everyday Americans.
Yeah.
I think it all really ties together.
Yeah. And I think that's a story, right? Like, so often we talk about polarization in this country, the left versus the right. I think the story's a lot more complex than that, frankly. I think it's about insiders and outsiders. The wealthiest in America, and I'm not talking about anyone that lives in Merrimack. I'm talking about billionaires in this country that have an incredible amount of influence on the laws that are passed and the benefits they get, and everyday folks that are helping to underwrite that. And we saw that with the Big Beautiful Bill. We saw that as they cut Medicaid, they're giving huge tax cuts to billionaires. Literally, billionaires are getting tax cuts that are effectively paid by everyday Americans. And it's actually increasing the federal debt, too. That's the fundamental divide in this country. And what we shouldn't allow is Washington or the political consultant class to kind of turn us against each other on this idea of, oh, it's a left-right divide and that's all that matters. I think it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah. Excuse me. So, how would you approach bringing Americans and Granite Staters together from either side of the divide?
Yeah, well, I think it's focusing on the problems and the issues that affect everyday Americans, regardless of whether they're on the left of the spectrum or on the right of the spectrum. Like, it goes back to this affordability crisis that we're having. Look, folks in this country and in New Hampshire specifically are paying more for childcare than for college.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. We should envision this as the critical infrastructure that it is. And this is where government can and should play a role. How do we expand childcare in terms of supply to make it more available to Americans? How do we give sufficient tax cuts and tax credits to folks that are working, trying to just make ends meet so that they can get a fair shake and afford childcare? And so often what's happening in, two-parent households, one of the parents is doing the math and saying, hey, it doesn't make sense for me to work for a few years. So I got to take care of my kid. And it's just, I got to spend so much money to take care of them. And then they're out of the workforce for years.
Or they have to work opposite shifts.
Yeah,
and
like completely unsustainable. Mm-hmm. We should be investing in that. We got to be creating opportunities for folks. But Washington completely fails to exercise that vision. We need leaders and new energy. This is the thing. I think everyone in this country is hungry for change. They're so hungry for it. And this is left and right. We need people that are willing to say, Washington has failed. I'm not going to do what they've been doing. I'm going to propose something different. I'm going to actually fight for it. And I may take some real chances with my political career. It may not work out in the long run for me, but I think this is what's best for America, and actually put country first. I ask people, where are the John McCains of the world now? We don't have enough of them. We need a lot more. That is what will actually save this country. People with political courage.
I think the facade of having a cultural divide or cultural warfare needs to be broken, and the class warfare that
Yep.
actually is going on behind the scenes needs to be exposed to average Americans, because I don't think a lot of people really understand where their taxes are going to. People like to say, I don't want to talk about politics, let's not get political, but they don't understand that politics affects their everyday lives.
Yep.
That's one of the things that I'm most passionate about as someone who has recently, within the last couple of years, really started to pay attention to politics and how it impacts me, my family,
Yep.
my neighbors. And it just blows my mind that
Yep.
it's all out there in the open if only people would pay attention.
Yep.
Is there anything that you think you could do to bring attention?
Well, I think we got to actually talk about it and talk about it bluntly and clearly. We have to, so often what we see from Washington and from politicians is they jump and dance around issues rather than just talking about the issues. Like, why is Jeff Bezos paying a lower tax rate than you? Does that make any sense? Why does Elon Musk get all these tax benefits? Does that make any sense? And this is the thing. Washington isn't willing to have those blunt conversations and then make changes. What we need is a new crop of leaders in this country that are willing to cast aside this kind of old playbook that's failed so many Americans and say, we're going to do something new and we're going to do something different and we're going to actually fight for reform, and we'll let the chips fall where they may.
Because right now it's actually like taxation without valid representation. And just for anyone watching, I think a lot of people don't really understand how much $1 billion actually is. Like 1 billion seconds is something like 31 years or something. And multi-billionaires, that should be going towards the country. They should be paying their fair share. But we could go down an entire rabbit hole.
One thing I'll say on inequality in this country. Right now, the 400 richest people in the country, the billionaires, have as much wealth as 50% of this country. That is incredible amount. It is breaking this country. It's breaking the social fabric of this country. It's breaking opportunity. And so much of the story here is that Americans don't really have a seat at the table. And my view is the only way that we're going to ensure that they do get a seat at the table is actually electing people that have a history of fighting for their own seat at the table. That's incredibly important. We're at a really seminal moment, I think, in American politics. The reason I got into this race. It's a moment that's going to require people to actually fight for values and policy changes that really benefit everyday Americans.
Agreed. Let's see, moving on. Let's see, we did that one. You already kind of talked about your experience and qualifications that you have to bring to Congress with your little intro, so I think we can skip that one. Unless you had anything to add?
No, well, look, what I will say, to me, one of the most important qualifications is that national service. And to me, I see it as really twofold. It's one, obviously, my military service, but two, also serving in the Pentagon. I served in a civilian capacity at that point. And when you're around and you're dealing with national security issues, whether you're wearing uniform or not in uniform, political spectrum doesn't matter that much, frankly. You just care about getting the mission done, getting it done right.
Right, the military is supposed to be nonpartisan.
Yeah, and working with your colleagues and actually achieving the goals you need to do. We need more of that in America.
Okay, so let's have a little bit of fun.
Okay.
With some lightning round questions.
Sure.
Do you have any nerdy hobbies? Or nerdy hobbies, and I say that with love as a self-professed nerd. I keep touching my mic.
Yeah, no, well, look, I guess I love American history. I'm a big fan. I love also American writers. I've read basically anything that Ernest Hemingway has written. I've read it, from short stories to obviously the most seminal novels. For Whom the Bells Toll is probably my favorite book of all time. And that's maybe, I don't know if that's a nerdy hobby per se, but
yeah, it could be. I'll allow it.
Okay.
What's your favorite sport?
To play or to
watch?
Observe? To watch. Look, I love college football. I think
Really?
I love college football.
I don't know. I think it's so boring ever since they started letting them sign endorsements and make money.
Well, that I don't like. I think
It's always about money, right?
Yeah. Well, look, there's two parts of it, right? It's these players, colleges have made, and the NCAA has made an incredible amount of money off the efforts and frankly the health too of these players. They should be compensated in some ways. However, it seems to have gone overboard now,
I feel like
where
it's impacted the spirit of the game.
Yeah, and where people are now shifting college from year to year and going where the endorsement deals are. It's detracting from the quality of it. There's got to be a medium of some kind in there. But I still love my college football. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I personally follow the Razorbacks because I grew up in Arkansas.
Yep.
But I usually stop watching after about week 2 after they've lost. Because, with college, once you've lost one or maybe two, there's no hope.
And the SEC is a hard place to compete. So, yeah.
Okay, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream?
I like Moose Tracks.
Oh, I love Moose Tracks.
Yeah, Moose Tracks is great. I was in Londonderry last week. I think it was Max Apples and had the ice cream there, and I had some pretty good Moose Tracks there.
Yeah, I love it topped with hot fudge and peanut butter.
Yep.
The melted peanut butter topping, and something crunchy like sprinkles or Reese's Pieces.
Very good.
Do you like pineapple on pizza?
No, I don't think so. I'm a bit of a traditionalist in that.
Have you tried it though?
I have tried it.
Okay.
And I think I'll pass.
Are you a dog person or a cat person?
Yeah, look, I am a dog person. My wife built her small business around our dog, literally. Winston, an Australian Shepherd.
I was about to say, you have to say their name.
Yeah, his name is Winston, an Australian Shepherd. He's the model for a bunch of the products. She makes pet products. And so, yeah, it's a big part of our life.
Okay. I saw a meme yesterday, and I'll probably ruin it, but are you a dog or a cat person? Excuse me? Are you an inhale or an exhale person? Just give me something fluffy to talk to in a weird voice. So
yeah.
That's how I feel.
That's funny.
Okay. Last question. This has been a short conversation, and I'm sure you have so much more to talk about.
Sure.
So how can voters learn more?
Yeah, so best place, my website. Now, my last name is a little hard to spell, so I'm going to spell it out. It's urrutiafornh.com, and Urrutia is spelled Urrutia.
Can you spell it phonetically?
Phonetically, I don't know exactly how to do that. Okay. It's beyond my
I
capability.
thought you were in the military.
Oh, you mean like using the, yeah. So uniform Romeo, Romeo, uniform Tango, India, Alpha.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I thought you meant it in some other way. But yeah. So yeah, that's the best way to go and learn more about me. And I think folks are going to hear a lot more about me as the campaign unfolds.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Christian. And Merrimack, that's our show for today. We'd like to hear your ideas for show topics, so reach out at talkmerrimack@gmail.com and follow us at Talk Merrimack on Facebook and Blue Sky. I look forward to our next conversation. Thanks for being here, Christian.
Hey, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.